As someone in the early stages of learning how to do aggressive vocals, these are some of the key tips and tricks that I've learned to save you a little bit of time and get you started. As you start learning how to do aggressive singing, sing with distortion, screaming, whatever you want to call it, there are tons of videos out there on YouTube that I've already watched hours of different videos by different YouTubers trying to learn this skill. And having put all that time into it, I've compiled it down to a list of key tips that I've learned and found helpful to you from not some kind of fancy singing coach, but just from somebody like you that's just trying to start learning how to do this. Then recently I started finding these YouTubes on how to learn to do aggressive singing and do it the right way so that you don't screw up your voice, compared to when I was just a little bonehead in high school jamming out to Metallica or Guns N' Roses, and I'd scream the song and my throat would be roached for like 2 weeks after that. Just for reference, I've been practicing for say 3 to 4 months pretty intently, no formal training, just watching videos, picking up the guitar, playing and singing, and just trying to get better. And I can already see a lot of improvement, which is great. When we hear the term vocal screams, we tend to think about bands like Linkin Park or Disturbed or Guns N' Roses, which is absolutely true. But those are pretty extreme, and there are a lot of lower level distortions which kind of tend to make a good starting point as a model as you try to look for examples to mimic. Take Sully of Godsmack singing Voodoo. It's not a belting scream, but there's definitely distortion to it. If it were clean, it would sound more like, never did I wanna be here again, and I don't remember why I came. So there is some distortion, even though it's not so in your face. And the same goes for some musicians that you wouldn't normally associate with being a screamer, such as Bob Seger. I like that old time rock and roll. Even talking like Beavis.
Yeah, Beavis. He sounds like this.
But if he were to be clean, he would sound like this. Ha ha, ha ha. So just remember, distortion is not an on-off switch, it's a sliding bar, and learning to use it at different levels is what helps make our singing voice more interesting. The first question I had, and what you're probably asking too, is, okay, how do I make that vocal scream sound without screwing up my voice? The first thing to do is get yourself familiar with a couple things that you're gonna see in almost all the scream videos. So the way I'm talking is in what we call chest voice. So it's just normal voice, right? It's gonna be a bit deeper than what we call head voice. So we have head voice, and then we have a break, and then we have chest voice, and then we have fry. So I'm just gonna make a sound starting in chest voice. I'm gonna go down to fry, and then I'm gonna go back up to the break and to head voice. You hear that break apart, and it kind of adds a little bit of distortion, right? That's fry. Then we come back up. That is what your vocal break is between the chest voice and the head voice. Now, some people start telling you to use that to find your scream. I found a couple other things more helpful, so I'm gonna go through my approach instead just because it worked better for me. But the takeaway is that at that point where your voice breaks, that's where your false chords, which is this part above your vocal cords, is engaged to the proper way to create that distortion in singing. However, I've had to be a lot more aggressive to get the scream there at that vocal break between chest and head voice. I found some other areas that were a little bit easier to start working up to it that weren't so aggressive, which means if I wasn't doing it quite right, it didn't hurt my voice as bad. Now, some of these tricks I found from the videos, others I just found playing with my voice or noticing things that I do in daily life that created that sort of distortion. For example, one thing I noticed is when I would woof with the dog, woof, woof, woof. It was a way that I was creating distortion with my voice that didn't hurt my voice. So that was one simple thing. Again, that's why just pay attention to your voice throughout the day and what little noises and sounds might you make that actually are using distortion. Again, one of the most frustrating parts of learning this is that there's not black and white direction. You have to go off feel and you just have to play with it a lot before you can get good at it. The best guidance I can give you is try all these different methods I'm going through, see what feels best for you. If anything starts to hurt your voice, stop doing it. Another thing I noticed again with the dog is that when I'd scold him in a low voice, I again had that distortion. Baron. And so again, there's another thing that I was doing in daily life that actually was a way to cause distortion sounds. Now you hear different terms like fry scream, false chord scream. I'm not going to get too hung up on a lot of the terms because frankly, I'm still kind of learning what's the difference between one and the other. I know there's some things I saw about fry scream, your vocal cords are open and they're closed during false chord. Again, that's a little bit beyond my point where I am right now. I do know that like for a whisper scream, as a reference, that's something like you'd hear from Marilyn Manson.
The beautiful people, the beautiful people.
It's a whisper scream. But right now I'm focused on just trying to learn to make the distortion sounds with my throat. Another common thing you'll see in videos is the huff. That huff is another way to put your false chords in the right position for doing singing with distortion. And again, the more you can put your voice forward, place it forward through all these, the better it's going to be. Another one is the grunt. If you're trying to lift something, so let's say you're just pushing against your hand. And you can kind of hear that's almost a gargle, right? It's that what I've been drinking in the throat. The grunt was one of the more helpful ones because it's kind of making you think about that support in your core to build that air behind it. The other thing that was really a big change for me and improvement is compression. The videos that were explaining compression talked about holding back this air that you're trying to support with your abdomen, right? And so it's not like you're, puffing up your cheeks like you're trying to fake out a breathalyzer. It's more about choking it off in your throat. So you want to build up that air and hold it back and then just start releasing the air a little bit. And for some reason, by doing it this way, it seemed to be a lot easier to add some distortion to it too. So you start, again, hold it back, try to force the air out and try to see if you can get that distortion by getting your false chords where they need to be.
You wake up and sweat, 'cause it ain't over yet.
And using that compression like that was a big deal because what I wasn't doing before, and I kind of realized it through this, is I just didn't have enough pressure behind the airflow. And so by doing this, you're restricting it, which is forcing that air at a higher velocity over your vocal cords, and that's what's giving me the ability to make a better scream sound. In fact, if you go back to that earlier exercise where I talked about going from chest voice down to fry to chest to head, and you go past that vocal break, that was why it wasn't working for me, is because I did not have enough core support behind it to push the necessary air. So I'd go, and that was it. And all these videos I saw, they would stop at that break and just let it rip, and I wasn't able to do that. After learning with the compression how to get that air behind it built up a little more, it definitely got better. So now, And so again, you need that energy, you need that breath to be coming behind it if you're gonna make the noise. You probably shouldn't jump right into trying a Chester Bennington scream. That's a little bit overambitious as a beginner, but starting with voices that are close to your register, a little distortion, just trying to start getting used to making those sounds is a great way to start. I did recently purchase a 12-week course from one of the YouTubers. I'm just starting it, so I don't really want to say much about it right now. I wanted to get this out early as a set of beginning tips for anybody that's wanting to start learning this. Get that out of the way and then get through the course and maybe do a follow-up afterwards to see how I've progressed. If you have any more tips or tricks on how to learn to do vocal screaming, please include them in the comments below so that we can all learn from each other. If you haven't done so, please click the link below to subscribe to the channel, click the little bell for notifications, check out the YCC merch store for anything you might like, and let's live for today.